Now for our second tutorial, graphing systems of inequalities using the graphing calculator. Just to show you how we can do some of these linear programming problems on the graphing calculator. First thing I'm going to do is clear out everything we have in y equals. I went to y equals and I'm going to clear that out. I'm also going to turn off this plot because that could cause some issues with the graphing we're going to do later. So a real easy way to turn off that stat plot is to scroll up so it's flashing on it and hit enter. And then it is no longer turned on. So that data that's in list 1 and list 2 will no longer be plotted, and it won't mess up any of our graphing we're going to do from here on out. First thing we're going to do is, now I don't know if this is on your tablets or not, but if you have your own calculator, you should have a program called Inequalities, and these applications are all in alphabetical order. I think if it's a new one, it's number 7. But what you want to do is turn Inequalities on by hitting enter and then press any key. So then what you have when you have y equals is these inequality symbols underneath. Now what we're going to do is graph number 1, that's the Willy Wonka problem, and we're going to look at that graph when at the graph of those on the graphing calculator. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to arrow up and I'm going to graph these inequalities. So I'm going to arrow up, and the first thing is one of our constraints was x is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to arrow up so it's flashing on x equals and hit enter. And now the x's come up. And I'm just going to enter x sub 1 is greater than or equal to 0. So now in order to do that, to get these to show up, I have to hit alpha. And then one of these 5 buttons that's underneath the symbol that we want. We want greater than or equal to, so I'm going to hit the 5th one. And then I'm going to right arrow to 0. Okay, right arrow and enter 0. So now that is entered, x is greater than or equal to 0. We've already got that. So I'm going to go back to y equals, so arrow up and hit enter. Now I'm on the y equals. The next constraint we have is for the Wonka bars. And so I want to put in y is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to hit alpha, greater than or equal to once again. Right arrow, and then I'm going to enter 0. And then I'm going to enter the other 2 constraints. 6x plus 4y is less than or equal to 6,000. And x plus 2y is less than or equal to 1,200. Now, the only problem with the graphing calculator is that these have to be in slope-intercept form. So the 6x plus 4y less than or equal to 6,000 in slope-intercept form turns out to be y is less than or equal to negative 3/2 x plus 1,500. So I'm going to enter that into the calculator. I'm going to left arrow, so I'm flashing on the symbol. Alpha, I want less than or equal to, so I'm going to hit the button underneath the less than or equal to symbol. And then we've got negative 3/2, and whenever you want to enter a fraction, you use the division button. And then the x is that variable button right there, x. And whenever you want to enter x in something like this, that's the button you hit. And then plus 1,500. And we're going to hit enter. And then the next one, x plus 2y is less than or equal to 1,200. That becomes y is less than or equal to negative 1/2 x plus 600. So we're going to hit, again, less than or equal to. So alpha, then the button underneath the less than or equal to, and then we're going to right arrow. And then we're going to have negative 1/2 x plus 600. Now, next we need to think about the window. Okay, and I looked at the graph for this. the greatest x-intercept we have is 1200. So I want to go out to at least 1200 on the x. So I'm going to go from like negative 100 to 1500. Again, just want to go out past. And for the x scale, I usually do 1/10 of the x max just so we don't get a really thick axis. This way you still see those tick marks. And then on the y max, the greatest y intercept we have is 1500. So I'm going to go from negative 100 to say 1800, just so we get above that. And again, the y scale, I'm going to have 1/10 of that y max. Okay. So now when we hit graph, okay, it's going to graph these inequalities. Okay, and each one is going to be graphed. And that looks kind of like a mess. So there is a way on these calculators to just look at that feasible region so that it only graphs that or shades that feasible region. So that is under, if you see the shades method, so we want to hit alpha and then the button under the shades, which is the y equals button, the one on the far left. And then this one comes up, and we want to graph the intersection of that inequality. So we can just hit the number 1. So now it's going to take away those that aren't in the intersection of these constraints. And that is the point. Now, finding x and y intercepts of that feasible region is pretty easy. We could also find the intersection of those two lines using this. We can go to second, then trace. We're calculating the intersection once again, just like we did in the linear regression. So we're going to calculate an intersection. Now, we want to be careful. What two lines are these? This one is the negative 3/2 x plus 1500. This one is the negative 1/2 x plus the 600. So that's not what we're seeing there. So we want to down arrow. And now we see the negative 3/2 x plus 1500. So that is one. So we're going to hit enter. And then the negative 1/2 x plus 600. We're going to hit enter on that one as well. And then guess really doesn't matter. Because your calculator is automatically going to snap to the closest intersection of those two lines, which there is only one. So then we are going to snap right there. So it was 900, I believe it was Wonka bars was our x, and the gobstoppers was 150. I might have that reversed because I don't have it in front of me, but that is the intersection. Okay. So then we can maximize our profit from that. So that is the graphing tutorial on how to graph systems of inequalities using your graphing calculator if you choose to do those. All right. Again, we have our test on Thursday of this week, and you will be able to use your calculators on these types of problems. Once again, it will not be as hard as the ones on the worksheet.